I'm Pastor Stephen Smith. I'm with Christian Leadership Partners. We provide leadership solutions for both profit and nonprofit organizations for coaching, teaching, and mentoring. What we want to do is we want to provide you with the tools necessary to be successful as a leader. If you go to christianleadershippartners.org, I think that you'll find that there are some solutions there that may help solve some of the issues or some of the problems that you may be having within your organization. I also encourage you to use some of those tools to develop the leaders underneath you. What we're doing is we're providing you with a free 30-day training program that looks at the kings of Israel. Why would we do that? Well, there's three reasons really. The first reason is that we can see what good leadership looks like and we can see what bad leadership looks like. By observing both good and bad leadership, we can develop the characteristics within our own skills to be able to become that much better a leader. In other words, I can follow the good leadership examples of some of these kings, and I can do away with some of the bad leadership examples from these kings. You'll also find that we have notes for you down below in the comments section, and if you look at those notes, then you'll see that we'll actually have an exercise at the end of this video that can help you succeed as a leader. It asks you certain questions that help you to think about the ways that you can lead in different situations. What we want to do is we want to take a look at King Amaziah today. King Amaziah ruled in the northern kingdom, and it says that he did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight, but not as his ancestor David did. Instead, he followed the example of his father Joash. Now, if we remember previously, Joash was actually a pretty good leader, but he didn't do away with all the different idols and the things within the kingdom. So we can see that he followed the patterns of the leaders ahead of him. And this seems to be a common theme within this entire study that we're looking at, but we really want to look closely at how are we leading in relationship to the leadership that's above us and the leadership that was before us. So in other words, we want to take a look at who was successful within our own experiences, and if we can identify who they are, then we can identify those skills and those traits and follow along with those characteristics and make sure that we're following those things to become that as successful as they were, or we can avoid the pitfalls that they fell into as well. We can also see that Amaziah failed to get rid of the pagan shrines and to get rid of all the negative things within his life. Now, it's impossible for us to really get rid of every single negative thing in our life, but if we know that we can identify those things, then we want to get rid of them. Let's see what the Bible says about that. 2 Kings 14:4 tells us Amaziah did not destroy the pagan shrines, and the people still offered sacrifices and burned incense there. We can see that Amaziah's leadership skills were not as honed as they should have been. For the people of Judah weren't following along in the way that they were supposed to, and they were worshiping other gods. Even though Amaziah had the right idea, he didn't inspire leadership from those below him. What are we doing to inspire leadership within our teams? How are we reaching out to those around us and saying, come and follow me, this is what we want to do? How are we encouraging them to do the right thing as opposed to the wrong thing? And how are we cutting out those negative things and just getting rid of them so that the people underneath us won't be tempted to do those different things? So what we want to do is we want to take a look and see how Amaziah did that. We can also see that Amaziah was a good strategic thinker, and he actually developed a really good army underneath him. In fact, it was a good size army that was successful in a couple of different campaigns. We can go to 2 Chronicles now and take a look and see what they say about how Amaziah led. This is 2 Chronicles 25:5. It says, Then Amaziah organized the army, assigning generals and captains for all Judah and Benjamin. He took a census and found that he had an army of 300,000 select troops, 20 years old and older, and trained them in the use of spear and shield. We can see that his leadership skills were very honed here, and he thought strategically about the things in the future. And we can see that because he went out and he found out what he had available to him. He also took a census to see how many of those things and how many assets he had. And then what he did was he honed those skills. He took those skills and he developed them. Now, whether it's an attribute that we have, or whether it's something that we have as a tool that we can develop, or if it's even the people underneath us, we have to make sure that we're training and using those things to accomplish the tasks and the goals that we want to as leaders. So King Amaziah went out and he attacked the Edomites. He was very successful in this venture because he went out and completely destroyed them. But he gathered together all of the things that they had and possessed, including their idols, and took them back with him. Look at what 2 Chronicles 25:14 tells us. When King Amaziah returned from slaughtering the Edomites, he brought with him the idols taken from the people of Seir. He set them up as his own gods and bowed down in front of them and offered sacrifices to them. So we can see that he actually was not quite as successful as what we thought he could be. He went out and he defeated these people that were not as effective as him. In fact, they were weaker than him. And then he took all of the things that they did and he copied them. Now, why would we do that as leaders? A lot of times we'll go out and we'll defeat other people, or we'll succeed in different areas, and we can see the people that we were successful over did certain things, and we copy their behaviors. Why would we do that? What we want to do is we want to identify the good, successful things that we can do as leaders and emulate those. If I know that I'm successful in different areas, I want to continue to do those things rather than adopting unsuccessful things and doing those things. So what we find is that because he did these things, the people of Judah conspired against him. They said, you know what, we don't necessarily want him as a leader. So although he thought strategically, and although he went out and he gathered together all these different people and was successful in battle, he taunted the nation above him, the northern kingdom of Israel, and they came down and they attacked him. In fact, they attacked him and they defeated him. In fact, they attacked him, they defeated him, they took over Jerusalem, tore down the wall, and they killed him. So we want to make sure that we don't taunt the wrong enemies. What are we doing as leaders that helps us to succeed? Does our pride get in the way of something that we're doing? We want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we'll see that again in King Uzziah when we go to the next couple of lessons. But we can see this in 2 Kings 14:19, and it says, there's a conspiracy against Amaziah's life in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but his enemies sent assassins after him, and they killed him there. So we see that he was only the second king that was actually assassinated here in Judah. And why is that important? Well, you can see that if your followers are trying to assassinate you, then your leadership skills aren't quite as good as they could be. So what we want to do as leaders is we want to identify these successful traits that Amaziah had. We also want to identify these negative traits. And he did have some successful traits. Let's take a look at those. Amaziah succeeded when he followed the successful practices of his father and those leaders that were above him. He also organized a successful army. He thought strategically in this fact. He also won some of his battles. Didn't win them all, but he won some of his battles. That means that he was successful in his strategic thinking. So what were some of his failures? Well, he taunted the wrong kingdoms and he ended up getting defeated by the king of Israel. We can also see that he allowed himself to be captured and killed. He didn't think that far forward, and in fact, his pride got in the way of the successes that he had. So what we want to do as leaders is we want to ask ourselves two different questions. The first thing that we have to identify is our limitations. Now, you can go to the people underneath you and you can ask them, and in fact, John Maxwell says they already know your weaknesses, so you might want to talk to them about that because they can see that you're actually trying to find out what's going on. So if I can identify what my limitations are, then I make sure that I can improve those limitations, or I can cut them out of the different things that I'm doing as a leader. The second question that we want to ask ourselves is, how do you know when enough is enough? How do you know when it's time to stop? Because a lot of times we'll see our successes and we'll think, well, I can keep on doing this, but we want to make sure that we know enough to be able to stop where it's most important. So we need to understand that as a leader, we need to ask ourselves that question. In fact, I encourage you to write that question down, and it'll make all the difference in the world. Now, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any one of these videos. And also, we have all these notes and all the links for everything that you might need down in the descriptions below. So I encourage you to go there, take a look at some of the resources that we have available for you, start using them, and become the best leader that you can be.